Hello and welcome to the ASMR Chess Global Championship Round 3, the featured game today of this all-important chess tournament is between Haley, my dear patron Haley, with the white pieces, and my other dear patron Dishon, or Elijah, with the black pieces. And Haley opens up the game with pawn to d4. And maybe you can already guess where this is going. Oh yes, we are making even more ASMR chess history here. Knight f6, c4, and can you guess the move? Pawn to e5. Yes, the Budapest defense, or the Budapest gambit, as we also saw in the last game. Heading into this round, both players have lost a game and won a game, so they have 1 point each. Let's see who can take a full point home in this game, or if it will be a draw. Probably with the Budapest defense, it's not going to be a draw. Haley plays pawn takes pawn. In all variations of the Budapest defense, that is the critical move. This attacks the knight. The knight goes to g4, the main variation. And if you put this through game review on chess.com, it will say that this is the last book move. There is no more theory in this game, but that is not correct, because on this channel we are developing theory for a new way to respond to the Budapest defense. Knight to c3, and we call this the cool hair attack. And this is not a move that is in any of the books. This is, as far as I know, an invention of the guy with the cool hair who just randomly played it against me, and myself, my own analysis, and the analysis of the ASMR chess community. This is our invention, and if you put it through the very, very, very newest version of Stockfish, it will also tell you that this is the best move. How cool is that? There is only one response here. We have checked a lot of stuff. We have checked bishop c5, we have checked knight c6, we have checked a lot of stuff here, but only really one actual try to not get run over by black, and that is to play knight takes pawn on e5. And they are playing to win, both of these players, and it's an amazing game. Why are they playing to win? Well, first of all, because it's nice to win in chess, and also they are playing for a prize. What prize? What will the winner of the ASMR Chess Global Championship, there was a mouth slip, not a mouse slip. I'm confusing myself here. The ASMR Chess Global Championship, or Midden's Memorial, as we also call it. What will the winner get? The winner will get this, the Chess-Up 2 board, the most advanced chess board in the entire world. It is touch sensitive. All the squares can light up and show you legal moves. It can light up in different colors to show you what could be a good idea, what could be a bad idea, what's a blunder, what's the theoretical move. Yes, it's connected to the internet, so you can play on chess.com, you can play against real people, you can play against bots, you can analyze games with it, you can set up puzzles with it. All the pieces have piece ID, so you can put them up in any configuration, and if it's a legal chess position, you can analyze it from there, you can try to solve a puzzle from there, you can play from there. Super easy. As I said, the most advanced chessboard in the entire world. That is what they are playing for. If you would like one of these, I have a link in the description to the Indiegogo campaign where you can pre-order it. If you do that, you will save $50 and you will also support this channel. Thank you very much. Now back to the game. When we had this position in the last round between two other players, queen to c2 was my suggestion instead of pawn to e4. And I analyzed that a bit, and I believe that this is queen to c2 is a very, very cunning try to confuse black even further. However, Haley played pawn to e4, and that is also one of the absolute best moves in the position. Taking space in the center, immediately defending this pawn by opening up this bishop, and really asking black, what are you really doing with this opening? How are you trying to get any sort of advantage with this? The only advantage so far is this sort of soft square on d4 that white has given up, and that is really all we have, all these three pieces in the game. Black plays what our theory suggests is the best move in this position, that is bishop to b4. So the ASMR community currently believes, along with myself, since I am part of the community, that this is the strongest try for black in this position. Here we see the point of the whole play from this variation of the cool hair attack, pawn to f4, asking this knight, what are you really doing? Also saying, black, you seem to have gambited a pawn in the center in what I believe is an unsound way. Would you mind if I just put 3 super strong pawns in the center, controlling like a million squares on your side of the board? What is the cost associated with this? The cost associated with it is that black can now play bishop takes knight, one of the main moves, that is check, pawn takes bishop on c3. And even though white has this amazing control in the center, taking up all these squares, these pawns are isolated and they are doubled. So they are a potential long-term weakness. It cannot be exploited right now though. This knight, look at that, it is attacked, it cannot capture here, defended here. And we know that this move can be problematic to play, so we see knight to g6. And I have not caught up on the newest developments in the theory of this opening. I am not sure how strong this move is, but we will see Haley try very hard. She will have a valiant effort, I would say, to attempt to prove that this is not adequate and that black is significantly worse right out of the opening. She plays knight to f3, and we see d6, opening up this bishop, bishop to d3. So this is the natural developing square for this bishop. And now we see queen to e7. And this, I believe, is a bit of a positional mistake from Elijah here. And I believe I also understand why this positional mistake is made. So on the sort of surface level, if you move the queen early in the game, early in any chess game, and you don't have a very, very good reason for it, it is often not a very good move, because you are exposing your most valuable piece to attacks and not developing in the correct order, which would be knight, then bishop, and then probably queen. Why would Elijah then play this move? Why? When I first faced the cool hair attack, which was played just by inspiration by a club player that I met who had really cool hair, and that is why the opening is called the cool hair attack. He just played it on inspiration. I thought it was bad because it's not in any of the books, it's not mentioned in any of the videos on YouTube about the opening or anything, so I thought it was bad, and I played in the usual manner, going for the usual patterns that I would normally play with black in the Budapest defense. And in the Budapest defense, queen to e7 is very often a move that we play, because there are some very cool checkmating attacks associated with this move. However, when we play the cool hair attack with knight to c3 and getting this completely different sort of setup, those patterns, they don't really work for black. And that is why this move is not as powerful as it would be in other variations, and that is why it may be very hard to justify it in this position. It is looking at the e4 pawn, potentially looking at the king. But the king is not really concerned about this. Haley castles the king to safety. And yes, there is this potential diagonal towards the king, but there's no dark squared bishop. The reason there is no dark squared bishop is because it gave itself up for this knight on c3 to have this damaged pawn structure. And that means that this is a long-term weakness if black can find a way to exploit it, but the diagonal towards the king is not the same issue as it would be if a bishop could land, for instance, on c5 or b6. After castles, we see knight to c6. And I have been studying this game a bit, also using the computer, trying to figure out the ins and outs, trying to understand this opening, and because I of course really want the cool hair attack to prevail. I have, after all, given up my beloved Budapest defense that I have been playing for many years. I gave it up when I found out that there was this cool hair attack that I felt just nullified the attacking potential of black and just sort of almost refuted the opening. So I've been trying to figure it out, and I've been trying to figure out if this move works, and I think maybe knight, instead of knight c6, then knight b to d7 may be a more prudent way. From here, you can go to b6 with a potential attack against this pawn here. Maybe that's something you would like to do, to focus on. And in some variations, you can also go to f6. Right now, it's very dangerous because you run into this attack, but this could also be a way to go and actually use these defensively to not let anybody mess with your king, but also aggressively coming in, looking at these squares here. If we can get the queen on the checking square here on the long diagonal, there could be potential from some great stuff. However, knight c6 is tried. And in chess, when you hear like a chess broadcast, hear Yasser Sarawan or something, some other awesome strong chess player commentate on when the greats play, when Magnus play, when Hikaru play, when all these great players, when they play, they often refer to the opening stage of the game as a discussion. A discussion, I think that's such an interesting concept. And what Haley and Elijah is really doing in this game is they are discussing the opening. So Haley said, I'm going to play d4 and c4. I'm going to play like a normal, quiet queen's gambit kind of system. And I believe that's a strong opening. Then there comes a counter argument from Elijah saying, well, I'm going to throw this offbeat strategy at you. I'm going to throw the Budapest defense or the Budapest gambit against you, and my argument here is that I will get very nice attacking chances, that in practice, in the practical reality of the 64 squares, this black and white jungle, it will be very hard to navigate this attack that I can get. Then there is a counter argument to that, which is the cool hair attack, the cool hair variation against the Budapest defense, where Haley is saying, actually, I have this way of playing that aims not to greedily try to keep the pawn that you gave me. You sacrificed the pawn to gain initiative and gain attacks. I'm not going to keep that pawn. I'm going to give it right back. Here you go, take your pawn. Do you know what I'm going to do instead? I'm going to say that my structure in general is actually very, very sound, and I control the center, and if I give the pawn back, you will not have attacking chances, and you will just have, let's say, you will just have sacrificed a sound, normal, conservative, positional approach that is recommended by many grandmasters. You will have sacrificed that for nothing because you are not getting the attacking chances. And now we then reach this point where queen to e7 and knight to c6. Black is saying, okay, but I'm going to try to prove, despite your argument, I'm going to prove that I do have attacking chances, and this is the way I'm going to do it. With this knight, I am, for instance, attacking this d4 square and trying to attack the center. Potentially, maybe, a move like pawn to c5 could also have been tried. That would be a different argument. But now, the argument is that knight to c6 will aim and help black to control the center and build an attack. And here Haley is challenging that argument immediately and playing knight to d4, going into that attacked square on purpose, saying, I see your argument, I'm not going to make a counter-argument trying to divert your attention somewhere else and say that I can justify my play somewhere else on the board and that you simply won't have time to do your plan and make your plan become a reality on the board. No, the counter-argument here is something different. The counter-argument is it doesn't work. It's an unsound idea. The logic of the idea doesn't work, so I will challenge you immediately to prove how that's supposed to work. How is this knight supposed to control d4? After all, I have d4 protected by the c3 pawn, the c3 pawn that you inflicted on me when you captured my knight. And here, black Elijah believes in the argument and plays knight takes knight, saying, I'm not going to allow you to have this strong knight here, influencing control over my side of the board. I'm going to chop that right off. That is why I played knight to c6, so I can have control of the d4 square. And look what happens. C takes d4. So by sort of just not calling his bluff, but by saying, okay, I challenge you to prove your argument, Haley has fixed her problem of the isolated pawns. She has forced black to fix her problem. And now look at these pawns. With the pawn back here, for instance, the c4 square was a little soft. And there was this diagonal. It was not a huge problem, but there was an avenue of attack against the king. Now look at this. These pawns attack here, 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 and here on black's side of the board. So that is the argument. The argument here is I gave the pawn right back, but the way that you tried to gain a counterplay in the center with attack on d4 did not work. Look what I established. Then black is saying, okay, but I am playing unorthodox moves, and I'm going to try to throw you off and play another counterintuitive move, which is queen to h4, which is actually, even though it violates a ton of chess principles, it moved the same piece twice in the opening, it develops the queen too early, and like these are generally considered an unprincipled way to play. If you put this move in the computer, however, it says, no, this is actually one of the best moves in the position. It's kind of paradoxical, in particular, when you see how Haley is handling it. First, she plays pawn to f5. This attacks the knight and gains even more space. The knight doesn't have anywhere to go, cannot go forwards, cannot go here, because we now have the d-pawn controlling that square. Cannot go here, we are controlling that square twice, even though it's protected by the queen, we're controlling it twice. So it has to go either here or here. And the best move, and also what Elijah plays, is knight to e7. And now Haley puts her foot on the gas. She plays rook to f4, nicely defended by this bishop. It's always nice in chess when you can utilize the power of a piece and make it effective without even moving said piece. Then you are gaining time. The queen is attacked. The queen does not have very many squares to go to. Here, defended by the queen. And here is a possible square, but both this one and this one, there is a problem associated with it, which is that anywhere this rook moves now, here for instance protected by the queen, will open up an attack against the queen from this bishop, again playing a role without having even moved. Realizing this, Elijah plays the queen all the way back to f6, which is the best move. And it's kind of paradoxical that the computer says, well, queen h4 actually a pretty good move, even though this counter idea saying, I'm going to chase the queen right back and you're going to waste a lot of moves, is played and is demonstrated and it works. And computer still says this is one of acceptable options for black in this position. Now, pawn to e5 with an attack on the queen. And you just see the awesome power of this amazing control in the center by the pawns that the cool hair attack has allowed Haley to establish. This pawn is captured. Best move. Pawn takes pawn. And not pawn takes pawn by Haley. Not that move. I guess she may have been afraid for like some queen here. Queen takes. But I believe it may be the best move to allow this, and you will see the same pattern come to life in just a variation, just slightly different. So if you don't capture it, then what about the rook? The rook is attacked. The rook goes to e4. Why? Because it looks at the knight and it looks at the king. And it looks like both knight and king is very adequately protected. But if you take a look at what happens in the next couple of moves, you will understand that this is actually something you really have to watch out for. I believe here that the way to justify black's play and the real strong argument here would be to play knight to c6. And by the way, we know that this knight is not the b knight because you can see it faces this way, so it started on this square. Okay, and the idea of this is it looks a little dangerous. It can be attacked like this, for instance, but actually can come here. And it looks also very counterintuitive to allow sort of this pin to exist on the board. But I believe that with very accurate play you can justify this move. Understandably, because that's a very difficult move to find. Also moving a piece in the opening again without developing further. So Elijah chose something different. Maybe also bishop takes pawn is perhaps playable. It looks dangerous though because of rook takes here. Elijah chose something different. Black plays pawn takes pawn on d4, which is a very, very good move, except for one thing. There is a killer idea here that white can play. And that idea is to exploit the vulnerability of the uncastled black king. The king has not castled. The king can be subject to attacks. And there is also a lack of development of pieces that will make it hard to defend against such attacks. And that move, maybe you can find it, that move is bishop to a3, coordinating an attack between the bishop and the rook on the pinned knight, the knight that cannot move. And it is, of course, defended twice and attacked twice, but one of the defenders is the most valuable piece, the queen, that was moved out early. So maybe that is sort of a little hint as to one of the reasons that can be dangerous to move the queen out early, is that the tool of trading pieces to defend is very often not available to the queen, because the queen is such a powerful piece that if you trade it for a bishop or a rook, well, then you will be at a great disadvantage. So in a way, the queen is a poor defender, because one of the tools of the trade she does not possess. There is only one way to save the knight, but it's not a pleasant way, and it is to give up the bishop to temporarily break the pin on the knight from the rook. Bishop to e6 breaks the pin, and the problem, of course, is this advanced f-pawn that can simply come in, yum yum yum, snag that bishop, delicious, and now black is down material. However, the game is not ended. Absolutely not. So, how will black try to fight their way out of this? Pawn takes pawn. And as long as there are queens on the board, particularly at the sub-master level, these are low elo heroes, like myself. These are mortal chess players, and when even Magnus Carlsen can make mistakes, then of course we can make mistakes. And when there are queens on the board, the position is always, always, always dangerous. So black's job now really is to make attacking chances and to try to make the board very messy and induce a mistake on the side of white, because white has this material advantage, as we would say, has won a piece, has won a bishop. First, Haley is saying, okay, I will use a age-old strategy that we have seen a million times in chess, which is to trade down like for like when we are ahead in material, and therefore she plays bishop takes knight, which is answered by queen takes bishop. And I say like for like, of course, a bishop and a knight are not the same piece, but they are worth about the same. Both are equivalent to about the strength of 3 pawns. Of course, it all depends on the position, but they are generally considered to be about equal in strength. Probably the bishop is a little bit stronger than the knight. And there is a follow-up as well from white to this trade, which again has to do with the king, the exposed position of the king. Queen to g4, saying I will come in, I will capture this pawn, and after I capture this pawn, you will try to move your queen out of the way so as not to be captured by my rook, which is defended by the queen. However, you cannot move the queen out of the way because you lose the king. Attack twice, defended once. Very good response by black. Push the pawn, gain a little bit more space. Also, this square is very hot, attack twice. This square is not so hot, only attacked once. However, rook on a to e1. Now this pawn, which is a backwards pawn, and it's isolated, so there's no other pawn that can protect it. That pawn we're not able to defend that any further. So rook takes pawn will come on the next move. So castles by black. Finally, black castles, and this also activates this rook in a very nice way on the f file. Without a doubt, the strongest move in the position. White, however, is crashing through. Rook takes pawn, winning a little bit of material, attacking the queen. So, how to create counterplay for black? Queen to a3, a very nice idea. This move attacks the pawn on a2, attacks the bishop on d3, and gets close to the back rank. That will be important. The back rank here, which is currently a little bit iffy, just a little bit. White can of course keep it under control with correct play, but will they be able to? There are not two rooks on the back rank, there's only one currently. The bishop here is undefended. So if they play something random, if Haley plays c5, of course queen takes bishop is making the game equal again, maybe even with an advantage to black. And we see a very classy move by Haley here. So she could play queen h3, which is a very nice move. It defends the bishop and it attacks h7 with a check and potential checkmating attack. However, that exact idea can be played in an improved version by first playing queen to e6 check. So the rook does not want to go into a self-pin. So the king slides away to the corner on h8. And what is the point? The point is now Haley plays queen to h3 with the checkmate threat, with the defense on the bishop, and now with the king here, there is not even an escape square here after the check, because this would be checkmate immediately. So just a little subtle nuance, really squeezing all the advantage possible out of the position. Best move is h6, which is what Elijah plays, so as not to allow the checkmate. And here is the critical moment of the game. Haley plays a flashy move. Rook to g5. Wait, isn't that giving up the rook? Is that a sacrifice? No, this pawn cannot capture the rook. It will expose the king. That is not legal. So the rook comes to g5 with an attack on g7 and a lot of attacking potential. And here is a winning idea for black. So the game is not over until it's over. The winning idea here is very, very hard to find because it involves a lot of not very intuitive moves. Queen sacrifice, for instance. What would you play here? It has to do with the back rank. It has to do with this pawn protecting this square. It has to do with the queen attacking the bishop, also having access to the back rank. It has to do with the rook here looking at both f2 and f1 against the king. So what is the move? If black were to play rook to e8 here, black would be winning. So why is that? First of all, this is of course just threatening. Rook takes, rook check with a winning attack. That's actually going to be checkmate very quickly. Rook takes rook, bishop interposes, and then one of the rook captures that bishop, and that's checkmate. But can't we just either move the rook or capture the rook? No. If we try to, for instance, capture the rook, we end up in great trouble with a checkmate. Queen comes to c1, that is check. The rook can potentially come back and block the check, but undefended will just capture that. The bishop could potentially also come back, but we're just capturing that because it's defended by this rook. We can capture it with the rook is pinned, but we can capture it with the queen being protected by the rook, and that's checkmate. Okay, so that is why rook takes rook does not work. How about rook defending the bishop? Wouldn't that work? No. And that has to do with the strength of this pawn that was established earlier. Rook comes to e3, attacking the queen, attacking the bishop. And you may say, and maybe this is what was missed, you may say, oh, we can interpose this rook, protecting the queen, protecting the bishop, everything should be fine. But here is the flashy move. Queen takes bishop. And now black is completely winning because rook takes queen does not work. Rook e1 is checkmate. There are a couple more variations that you can explore for yourself if you want. But this very, very hard idea, was very, very hard to spot, was unfortunately missed by Elijah, which we can all, of course, understand. Who of us would have found that move? And instead, there was a different idea, which is queen takes a2, which is also a very devious move and not without very serious attacking prospects. Because now the queen is threatening to come to the now defended f2 square, queen f2 check, king moves, and queen takes rook. Bishop interpose, queen takes bishop, checkmate. So there's a checkmate threat right here. This is challenged by rook coming back to the f-file, being protected. And now we see rook to e8. It's almost the same, except that this rook can now play rook takes rook. And that is check, not allowing black to unfold their checkmating pattern. That is check, only one legal move because of the bishop, and that is rook takes rook. Again, the threat is queen f2 check, winning with a checkmating attack. But here, Haley sees that and plays queen g3, defending against that attack, and also having an idea of an attack of her own. She wants to prepare that attack. Black is not done throwing challenges at white though. Elijah plays a5. Wait a minute, can this pawn it's a passed pawn. Can it come down and become a queen? That would be big trouble for white. Very patiently, Haley plays h3, allowing a4. Why is that? King h2. That is why. Now there is no back rank checkmates anymore against the king. Meaning that after a3, look how close this pawn is now to queening. After that, Haley can now afford to leave the back rank with rook to e7, coordinating attack with the queen and the rook on g2 with a checkmating threat. Also, it should be noted that the bishop can also play a role, for instance, like so, a checkmating threat like this. And now it really is very close to hopeless. I believe there is a forced checkmate in 6 or 7 moves from here. Trying to confuse things, Elijah plays g5, stopping the queen immediately coming to g7, however opening up a diagonal towards the king. Haley can pick up a tempo with queen d5 check, queen e5 check. Of course, the rook could be interposed. We would just capture that as it would be undefended. Elijah instead played king to g8, and after king to g8, queen to g7 is mate. Queen g7 checkmate. And that is how this really inspiring game ended. That is the end of this part of the discussion between the philosophy of the Budapest defense and the response of the cool hair attack. So now we have some more games to look at. Let's go to the other chessboard and look at those. Thanks to Haley and Elijah for providing this amazing and interesting game for us to look at. And the next game we're going to look at here is Kamikaze versus M. Jackson. And Kamikaze opens up with e4, c5, the Sicilian defense, d4, and that is the Smith-mora gambit. C takes d4, and c3 is the point of the Smith-mora, saying if you capture my pawn, I get a free development of the knight, and if you do not capture the pawn, I can capture here. And here, M. Jackson plays a move that I recommend, and I'm curious if he has seen my video where I recommend this, d3. It's not really the strongest move in the position, but it's a completely fine move, and the point is to take white out of theory so that they can't play all their pre-planned ideas against this. So d3, bishop takes, knight c6, knight f3, d6, castles, and knight f6. Of course, d6 is about protecting here, so we can play knight f6, bishop g5, g6, going for a, should we say, dragon style setup against the Smith-mora gambit. Bishop takes f6, e takes f6, and knight bd2, getting close to completing development. And you could say that it looks very good for white. There's an isolated pawn here, there's some doubled pawns here, and not a lot of development or control of the center for black. But what black has is the 2 bishops, which makes this position completely fine for black. I would say this is about equal. Bishop g7, knight c4, b5, knight e3, and a6, gaining space on the queen side. Knight d5 and castles. So this is of course a very, very strong outpost for the knight. This game is really, really nice because it is one of those fighting back and forth games, and you'll see in just a short while what I mean by that. So, rook e1, knight e5, knight takes e5, and f takes e5. So now the problems with the double pawns, they have been very nicely dealt with, and now there is good pawn here in the center. However, this bishop is, you know, staring into the neck of its own pawn and is currently not that effective. Maybe black can try to remedy that later on in the game. c4, great idea here, chipping away at the structure, the pawn structure on the queen side. Bishop e6 attacking the knight, c takes b5, a takes b5, and bishop takes b5, winning a pawn, and also now two extremely strong passed pawns, connected passed pawns here on the queen side, protected passed connected pawns, very, very nice. And the plan will for white be to push these down the board, make a new queen, and white should have a pretty significant advantage currently in the position. The two bishops are still deadly for black though. Rook b8, a4 protecting the bishop, bishop d7 challenging that bishop, and bishop takes bishop, a very nice move. Queen takes bishop, because now there's not the synergy between the two bishops being able to control all of the squares. Now black only has a dark squared bishop, meaning that these pieces here on the light squares are very hard to challenge for black. b4, notice how this extremely strong knight on this extremely nice outpost here is protecting that. f5, striking in the center. a5, going for the queen. Queen a7, trying to stop the pawns. And maybe someday f2. Maybe someday, if this pawn disappears, maybe someday knight b6, rook b d8, protecting against possible forks, even though it's already protected by the queen. But of course queen is also attacking d6, so the rook also protect against that. Queen d5 check though. King h8, so the queen is very strong, very nice centralized position. b5 looks like it's all but over, but it ain't over until the big queen sings. Isn't that what they say? F takes e4, rook takes e4, and rook f6. A very nice defensive effort by black here, trying to keep everything together and trying to stop the avalanche of these pawns just rolling down like a snowballing down the hill here. And here's a little tactic. Rook takes e5. And if the correct move is played for black here, there is a potential to get right back in the game. Rook takes f2, exposing an attack from the bishop on this rook, thinking about playing the other rook here. That move is not played, but rook d f8 is also very strong and also getting back in the game so much for black, because f2 is now weak, it is a target, and that means that black has something else to do. Black is not only trying to defend now, trying to defend against the material advantage and the pawns rolling down the board like space invaders. No, black can create counterplay, and black starts turning the game around now, getting a lot doing a lot to get back in the game. Rook e2 defending f2. Rook f5 attacking the queen though, and opening up the bishop. It's all springing to life. Can you see that? So there's only really one move, queen all the way back to d1, bishop takes rook and queen takes rook. So now they are even on material in terms of points, but of course it's unbalanced because black has the exchange rook for knight, but white has these two super strong pawns. They are potentially super strong, but after the check, king g8, queen a2 check, and queen f7, queen takes f7, rook 5 takes f7, and g3. What is g3 about? Making an escape square for the king, and more importantly, making ready for playing pawn to f5, f4 at some point. But black is really trying to stop these menacing pawns. Rook f5. This attack is very dangerous. So rook b2 to defend, rook b8 attacking the knight, rook d2, saying, okay, I can jettison this pawn, but I can get this pawn instead. Will that work out? Rook takes b5, knight d7 with an attack on the rook, rook attacks the pawn, rook takes d6, and rook b1 check. That's not checkmate because of the prudent move pawn to g3 earlier, so the king can nicely escape to g2. But what is the big problem? Rook takes a5. Oh, the two very strong pawns, they are now gone. White is still up one pawn, but down the exchange knight for bishop. So what will white's strategy be now? Rook f6, king d7 attacks. It's defended by the knight, but rook f3 in case this knight is destabilized. g5, knight f6, king g6, knight g4, h5, and knight e3. So here we see the strategy for white. It's saying, oops, I had this great advantage. Now I have a lot of problems. I will not try to play for a win, I'll try to play for a draw. So I will make what they call a fortress in chess, a sort of position that cannot be broken down, and the game will end in a draw. Magnus Carlsen famously does not believe that the fortresses are really possible in chess. He says he does not believe in fortresses. Will M. Jackson believe in fortresses? g4, rook f8, rook a1. That's a checkmate threat. That is a checkmate threat. f4. So we see this pawn here. That is the plan. That was the idea of pushing these pawns. And now it's all but over. Rook a2 check, knight c2 blocking the check, but rook takes c2 is checkmate. So an amazing game where first white challenged black with crazy gambit, the Smith-mora gambit. That was declined by white, and then that was declined by black rather. White, however, was able to establish these very nice pawns on the king side, on the king side, on the queen side, sorry, going down the board. And then through a series of very cunning moves and devious tactics, M. Jackson was able to turn the game around and actually win. What a nice game. Thank you so much to both players for providing that nice game for us to look at. Our next game is between Dusty Muffin and Aesir, and I always give a shout out to Aesir and as well as Addison. Aesir is in the tournament and organizing the tournament, and Awesome Addison is behind the scenes also doing a great job in organizing the tournament and providing all this structure for us to have fun. So Aesir and Edison, you guys rock. Thank you so much for your work. Dusty Muffin plays e4. We see c5, another Sicilian. Knight f3, d6, bishop c4, knight f6, d3. A closed Sicilian offbeat line. Knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4, castles, and knight d4. Going into white's side of the board already. But this knight is pinned. This bishop is outside the pawn chain, cannot come back to defend. So knight e5, which hangs the queen. And do you know what black plays? Black does not capture the queen. Black plays d takes e5. f3. So the queen survives. It cost a full piece, but the queen is still on the board. Knight takes f3. What? That is crazy. Aesir is going crazy. But it's check. G takes. And queen d4 check. What a game. What an amazing attack, just coming out of nowhere. Refusing to capture the queen, but going for this kind of sacrificial, just amazing attack. Straight out of the open. We are on move 9. King g2. Bishop d7. We don't want white to capture that. So of course this is a very uncoordinated position for white, and the material is even equal, so the king position is exposed. Will black be able to exploit that? Knight d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, and queen to b4. This is about tying down the bishop to the defense of this pawn. c3 is asking a question of the queen. Where do you want to go? Queen goes to b6, keeping an eye on b2. b3, okay, now we can never capture on b2. There is no pawn there anymore, and the one on b3 is very well defended. But queen g6, look at this queen zooming all around the board. Now there's a check here. What a journey this queen has been on. And it's a check. King h1. King goes to the corner. Will it be able to be exploited there? Will we see something like bishop here? No. Castles. Long. Rook g1, challenging the queen. Queen h5. Rook g5. That is attacking the queen, and it is nicely protected by the bishop. The queen goes to h4. Can it be attacked once more? Bishop takes f7. No, but white can capture this pawn. Is that a free pawn or is it bait? g6. The bishop is about to come out. Bishop is about to come out. This bishop can come out now. Rook takes e5. So white is snacking on the pawns. e6. The bishop can come all the way here now with an attack on the rook. That is very, 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 very dangerous, because it looks at h2 as well. Bishop g5. Uh-oh. It's just tactics flowing one way, flowing the other. Just the battle is just going back and forth in an amazing way. This is, of course, a fork on these two pieces. Queen to f2. Look at that. Infiltrating very, very deep, but also it could be hard to get out again. Maybe. Bishop will capture the rook. Bishop takes d8. The king is not recapturing that bishop. No. Bishop d6, that is the point. That is the point because the queen is still looking at h2. So, bishop f6, defending the rook, also attacking this rook. Is this attack from black? Is this genius, or is it just the moves of a mad player, or a mad genius even? Let's take a look. Let's find out. Bishop takes e5. Okay, bishop takes e5, and the rook f8. So black is a bishop down, but this bishop is trapped. Look at that. This pawn is protected very nicely. This pawn is protected very nicely. All of this. Oh. So queen g1 offering a trade of queens. Queen takes f3. That's check. Maybe queen f1, keeping protection of this square would have been a better way, but then of course queen could just have come to h3, but still maybe that was to be preferred. Only one move, queen g3, queen takes f7. Oops, that was the point. Rook f1, challenging again. And here is something amazing. Queen sacrifice. Queen takes f1, check. But you don't have to calculate that far to see that it's okay, because queen takes queen, rook takes queen. That was a forced sequence, and now black is up a rook. Now it's very, very hard for white here. What an amazing game by Azier. And I don't fault Dusty Muffin at all for faltering or falling short at least once, because Azier is just playing such creative and very sort of, let me just come out and say it, weird moves, and sacrificing and playing unintuitively, so it's very hard for the white player here to rely on their experience and normal form of, let's say, pattern recognition when all these crazy new ideas is being thrown at you. I've been on the receiving end of that kind of attack sometimes, and it's very, very hard to deal with. Rook goes to a1. Does not want to be captured by the king. Wants to attack the a2 pawn, and now it's a mop-up job, clean-up job. King g3, rook takes a2, king g4, rook takes h2, bishop takes h2. Wait a minute. Let's go back. King goes here, and the rook is lost. Because when the king moved out of the way, what happened? Oh my god, the bishop was defending that square, was defending the h2 pawn. So what is this position like? Light squared bishop for black, dark squared bishop for white. That can be drawish. Sometimes those positions are going to be a draw. But 4 pawns for white against 6 pawns for black. So even after blundering a almost full rook, blundering a rook for a pawn, black is still the one for choice. But was this the last mistake of the game? I don't know. Let's see. e5 check, check from the bishop. King g5, the king is getting active. These pawns, oh, the king can just come in and capture them. Also, this pawn here, how are we going to protect that as black? Or are we even going to? Bishop e8. Bishop takes pawn. King d7, trying to get in here to the center and stop the white king from infiltrating. Then maybe we can play h5. d4 though. King c6, changing plans, changing gears, saying, okay, if you dominate the center, I will go to the queen side, and this pawn, maybe that will become a passed pawn, and I can make a queen down here. d5 check though. Uh-oh, now that's a passed pawn. Should that have been allowed? Doubtful. King b5, bishop d6, c4, c4, b4. That's an interesting way, not capturing the pawn, just saying now you have to be tied down to the defense of that pawn as well. Black says no, a5, counterattacking. B takes a5, king takes a5. Now this pawn can come, and then here, but defended twice. And you see how this bishop is living in the dark squared universe, and this bishop is living in the light squared universe. So that bishop can never really help this pawn getting through here. Still, black is up one pawn. e4, b5, e6, king b6, bishop b4, king c7, almost there, almost ready to stop the pawns. King f6, king d8, bishop e7, check. Just in time to get the king out. King goes to c7, king goes to g7. And now I think this is the only move that you can really play. h5. However, g5 is played. The point is bishop takes g5 and then b4. Cunning idea. C takes b4, c3. Look at that. Look at that. d6 check. King takes d6, e7. That is defended. But if we can lure that bishop away by having maybe forcing it to capture here, then maybe that's no problem. h5, protected by the bishop. Two pawns running down the board now. King f8, attacking the bishop. King d7, just defending. b4, so that's of course possible because the king is defending the bishop and in the bishop's way. c2 though, b6, bishop g6. This is possible now, but the bishop can come in and capture, but then we make this queen. Very, very, very tense situation. b7 and king c7. And I believe this is a mistake. Because king g7, bishop e8, and king f8. Just losing a move on purpose for white there, and now what are you doing with this bishop? What are you doing? Going to g6, king g7, bishop e8, king f8, and bishop g7 is a draw. It's a draw by repetition. None of the players could find a way to force this position to culminate in a full point. Was that the correct result though? Not really. If we saw, let's just back up. Here, after king f8, instead of bishop g6 going for the repetition, black has a cunning plan. That would be bishop d7. So we are controlling both of the queening squares. This we don't want to advance, but also we have the problem that this will advance. So we can't easily move this bishop anywhere. So let's try instead something like maybe king here. Now we just capture this. Okay, so after this, we can win this bishop. We make a queen, takes, takes. Now we have pawn and bishop versus 2 pawns, but now it's 2 pawns versus a bishop. Now black can't lose. Now black can now only win, or it can be a draw, and with correct play black will win. So the bishop has to control this, and it has to control this. So it can stay there. Then let's go king e7, but we just go h4. And that's the point. That's the point. The king is too far away. The king is too far away to control any of the pawns. If we capture this, this is going to be a queen, and we can get this bishop with some fork somewhere, and this is pretty easily winning. And if we don't capture that, let's say we go here to try to stop the pawn there instead and still control this, we just go here, exactly the same problem. Like we are somehow, one of these pawns is going to queen. The bishop can only control one of them. What a crazy, crazy game. And what a very, very tough end game. The game was just going back and forth and back and forth, and then it ended in a draw. You know what? I love chess. I love watching these games, and I'm very happy for Dusty Muffin and Aesir for providing this game. Thank you very much. So now it's time for Turtledove against Wilson. And this is a caro-kann. e4, c6, d4, d5. The caro-kann. f3, the f3 is the fantasy variation. e5, bishop e3, d takes e, f takes e4, and queen h4 check. Maybe that was missed. The point is, yes, g3, that does defend, but queen can take. But queen can take here on e4 with an attack on the rook, with an attack on the rook. Queen d3 is not the perfect way to meet this, because now the queen can take the rook. Instead, what could have really been tried was queen e2, because if queen takes the rook, then bishop g2, queen takes on h2, and then let's actually explore this very deeply. So queen e2 takes here. This queen is now trapped, has to take on h2, and the very, very cunning idea is bishop takes here with check. So we can capture here. Of course, the knight will come in and capture here. Queen takes h2, and e takes d4. And believe it or not, black has lost the queen, but gained a rook, a pawn, and a bishop. And this position is almost perfectly equal, just a smidge better for black. Amazing. Queen d3, however, makes it so that this resource is not possible. So the rook has been snagged after it was attacked. Pawn takes pawn in the center, so the situation is black is up 5 points of material, but white is far, far ahead in development. Like, there is a queen here, and that is basically it for development. No castle king, all the other pieces still on the back rank. This pawn has only moved 1 square. Queen goes to the center, trying to control the queen without queens on the board. Being behind in the development is much less of a danger. Queen takes d5, c takes d5, and bishop b5 check. Knight c6 blocking the check. Knight e2 trying to get into this square, very nicely attacking this, blockading this, and looking at important light squares on black side of the board. g6, knight b to c3, knight e7, and castles long. So this knight still has the option of coming here. It's a plan. This rook is looking at this, and there's a lot of development going on for white. White has a lot of dynamism in their play. What is the problem though? The problem is that they are a rook behind. So their plan will have to be to make an attack that is very, very fast. So fast, in fact, that this rook and this rook, which are the rooks that, like, black is ahead, if one of those rooks is not able to develop and become part of the game, then white will not be able to, then white will not feel the fact that they are behind one rook, because in reality they won't be, because one of the opponent's rook is just asleep in the castle. So white's attack depends on speed. White's whole plan is about speed now. a6, bishop a4, because the bishop was attacked. Bishop g7, getting ready to castle. Bishop f4, defending the pawn and castles. And this pawn is attacked twice and only defended once, so maybe that will fall soon. Knight takes d4. That was protected. Knight takes d4. Black is saying, okay, I lost a pawn, but I'm happy to trade pieces because I'm still ahead in material. Rook takes d4, and bishop e6 with a nice attack against the rook. The rook goes to c5. And we're not making the Fischer blunder of capturing on a2. Wilson is not playing that move. No, rook a c8, completing development. Knight c3, knight d4, knight e4. Look at that square. Can be very interesting at some point, maybe. But rook takes c4. The knight has to go away from this square it really wants to go to, because it has to recapture on c5, b5, bishop b3, and knight takes b3, and a takes b3. So the attack did not materialize for white. The attack was deflected, and now we see that this rook really counts. As soon as that enters the game, it will be very tough for white. Rook c8, you can see it already. b4 protecting the knight though. Rook c6, king d2, bishop f8, attacking the knight. Bishop e3 defending, bishop takes, and bishop takes. Is it going to be a fortress? Not really. But what is White's plan? White's plan is to try to contain black on this side of the board. Black has an interesting way to try to break through, giving up the exchange. Rook takes c5. B takes c5. Now this is a passed pawn, but now, of course, white has only pawns. Only pawns, yeah? Would you subscribe to that? Not an advantage in this position when the light squared bishop here is so strong. However, almost all of the white pawns are on dark squares, so hard to target with this light squared bishop right now. King f8, the king joins the battle. King c3, likewise. King e7, king b4, bishop c8. Just saying, no. You are not coming in here and snacking on my pawns. I need those to become queens, so I can checkmate you. King a5 anyways. King e6 and king b6. Okay, you cannot capture this, but you can hurt this guy down the board, and you can also attack this bishop. King takes e5. White loses an important pawn, but king c7 attacking the bishop. Bishop f5, c3. Look at that. All these pawns, dark squares. The light squared bishop has a little bit of a hard time controlling them. King d5, attacking this pawn. c6. a5, going for the queen. King b6, wanting to stop those and also hurt this pawn down. Maybe king b7, keeping an eye on the queening square. Keeping an eye on the queening square could have been a plan as well. b4, c takes b4, a takes b4, c7. c7 here. King c4. King a5, king b3, king b5, bishop e6. King c5, f5, king b5. There's no way to make progress for white because the pawn is controlled. g5, king c5, f4, g takes, king d4, king takes b2. King e4, king c3. It looks like it's going to be extremely hard to get a draw for white here. King takes f4, b3, king e5, bishop h3, king f6, b2, king g7, and b1 equals queen. And that is the game. This pawn really wanted to become a queen, but it was controlled by the bishop, and white chose to not suffer anymore. It's checkmate in 8, so they resigned the game from here. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Turtledove from Denmark, and thank you very much to both you and Wilson for playing this game and giving us this great entertainment. So for the next game, we have Hans-Peter from Germany against Schauf9 from the USA. We see d4, knight f6, c4, and will we see the Budapest defense? No. e6, knight c3, bishop b4, bishop d2, b6. And this is the Nimzo-Indian defense. That is a rare sight. Fun fact, my first ever chess tournament game, I had this position. We don't see this opening, the Nimzo-Indian defense, so often anymore, but it's about 100 years old, and it's very hard to play for an advantage with black, and it's can also be hard to draw with it, but it has a lot of venomous ideas. Knight f3, bishop b7, a3, challenging the bishop. Of course the bishop cannot go back, will be trapped. So bishop takes and bishop takes. That is the point of white's setup. The point of putting the bishop on d2 is that we don't have to play b takes c3 and get the double pawns. Instead we can do this. What is white's point? Excuse me, that is white's point. What is black's point? Look at that. e4. How is white ever going to play e4? First we see d6, e3, there's no e4. How are we going to play it? Knight e4 already exploiting this weak square. That is very nicely controlled. Bishop d3 challenging the knight, castles. Knight d7. This knight wants to come here to reinforce this knight. Knight f3. And this is, first of all, the idea is we are attacking this twice, and we are also able to play f3 if we want to kick this away. f5 protects the knight. f3 kicks the knight away. The knight takes on c3. b takes c3. Okay, white ended up with those double pawns anyway. And queen h4. The attack begins. This looks like some of those famous Nimzo-Indian or King's Indian even defenses, like the King's Indian Nakamura one, where he had the bishop back on c8 against Wesley. So e4, breaking in the center. f5 saying no. Let's keep this closed. d4 trying to insist on breaking in the center. e5 saying no. I won't go. No, I will play maybe bishop back to c8, and I will try to make some checkmating attack. Look at this rook's potential to come here. Backing up the queen on a battery. h2 could be very, very soft. Queen a4, counterattack. Knight goes to c5. It's a very strong knight there. The queen now forced to go to c2 to defend the bishop. Rook f6. That is the plan, the checkmating plan in action. Knight b3 challenging the knight, but rook h6. Checkmating threats galore. h3 stopping those, but bishop c8. Bishop c8 just like Nakamura. Rook f2. Rook g6. Now bishop. Queen can come and capture here. Bishop can come and capture here. And the pawn can capture because it's pinned. Knight takes knight. Let's get rid of that knight. B takes. Bishop f1. Let's really defend g2 as well as we possibly can. Of course, queen can take on h2. Bishop can take on h2. But we can also play rook b8, and that is what Shaw did play. Now, king h8. King h1 rather, saying, I'm not sure I want to allow this, these tactics exploiting the pin anymore. But h6, rook a2, just doing everything possible to defend. Look at that, every single white piece is defending this. King h7, very, very patient move. Queen a5. Oops. Trying to go for activity. I can see the point. The point is we want to come here. We want to make some kind of counterattack. But the queen was needed in the defense. a6. And the queen goes to c6. Queen had a chance there to go back to d1. There was a chance to come back to the defense. Now the queen cannot come back to the defense. Rook goes to b7, just saying you're not getting in and you're also not getting back. It captures on, the queen captures on a6, but rook g3, queen a8, queen d8, and white is back in the game. It was needed at some point before this to push some kind of hole in these pawns. It was absolutely needed. Maybe even a plan like g5 coming to g4 after an h5 move. a4, rook b1. Can white survive this? Can white survive this? That's a very active rook. a5. Trying to make a queen. This game is going between this side of the board and this side of the board all the time. Queen d7, queen c6, queen takes c6, d takes c6, and rook b8, trying to come back and defend. After that exchange of queens, all this amazing space advantage on the king side here is not worth as much, unfortunately. It would be no problem whatsoever, because the positional strength of these pawns is so that all these pawns are good for nothing, and white is completely passive, if it were not for one very simple thing. Pawn to a6, this pawn. It wants to become a queen, it has ambitions in life. Rook a8, trying to control the pawn. The pawn now goes to a7. Rook g6, trying to come back. Now it's serious. No more attack, we have to come back and destroy that pawn before it becomes a queen. Bishop d3 can easily come out now, even though it will take some time, because all the bishop is on the light squares and all the pawns are in light squares. Bishop e6, rook f b2, rook g3. Now that move is too passive, I believe. Rook b8 here, I think, wins outright. Rook b7 is played, which is still a winning advantage. Bishop takes on h3. G takes h3. Rook takes h3, but rook h2. Rook takes f3. Bishop e2. Rook takes c3. A lot of pawns falling for white here. A lot of pawns falling for white. Rook takes c7. Rook a3. And can black really stop this pawn? Is it really possible? Was a bishop sacrifice? But maybe if this is really, if black is really able to stop this pawn, like there's a lot of black pawns here. I know white is up a bishop, but there's a lot of black pawns and they are all on dark squares. All very, very hard to do anything about for this bishop. Will it be possible? Rook g2. Not trying to take this pawn, going for a counterattack instead. Rook takes a7. So the pawn did fall, but rook takes g7 check, and it is the g rook. Rook g takes g7 check, like so. Okay, and that is decisive, because it's check and it means the king has to move, and now white can cash in and play rook takes g7. Rook takes a7, I mean. Rook takes a7. And now the game is all but over. Rook b8. Rook g b8, just stopping any sort of infiltration. Rook c8, c7, king g7, rook b8, rook takes the pawn, rook takes rook, king g6. And from here it's a checkmate in 3, but will white be able to find it? Rook g8 check, king f6, bishop g4, h5, bishop takes h5, d5, c takes d5, c4, rook takes rook c6 check, king e7, rook g6 check, king f8, rook a7, c3, and here it comes, rook c8 check. What a game! What a game! What amazing comeback by white. So black had this tremendous attack, but was at the critical moments unable to find the correct plan. It would require some sacrifice to push through. White was putting everything behind the g2 pawn, putting everything in the defense, and black was not able to find the correct way. Do you know why? Because chess is a very, very hard game. Thank you to the two players for providing that extremely entertaining game for us to enjoy. Now, let's go to Yuan and Knight and their game. Yuan with the white pieces opens up e4. We see an e4, e5 game. Double king's pawn. We haven't seen a lot of those in the tournament so far. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, that is the Rui Lopez. a6, that is the Morphy defense. Bishop a6, knight f6, that's something called the Columbus variation. Castles, because this pawn cannot easily be captured. Rook e1, there is a lot of theory there. Instead b5, now we play b5, bishop b3, bishop c5, rook e1, defending the pawn, castles, c3. So Yuan really knows their theory here. Of course, the idea is to play this very nice move, d4. It's a thematic idea in basically all our positions, all Rui Lopez positions. You want to play c3 at some point and d4 at some later stage. I know Magnus Carlsen plays some fancy stuff with just pawn to d3, just defending here, and like in some ultra modern super grandmaster way that nobody understands, but for mortals that is the plan. c3, d4. So d5, striking in the center, nice move. E takes d, knight takes d, and h3. Why? Because this pin is very often very problematic to deal with for white in the Ruy Lopez. Rook e8, defending the e-pawn. d4, challenging the e-pawn once again, picking up a tempo against the bishop, and also being very happy that the main strategic point of the whole opening, playing d4 with advantage, has been achieved. E takes d4, and that is a mistake. Because here, rook takes rook, queen takes rook, and bishop takes d5. Diversion tactic. Yuan doesn't find it. Bishop takes d5. Queen takes d5. Oops. Knight also didn't see that idea. Instead, of course, we play, not of course, because this is a hard game, but I have the advantage of hindsight, and you know, I can just sit here and analyze, and I can see, of course, rook takes first. That's check, then queen takes, and then queen takes bishop. But queen takes d5, rook takes, rook. It's not checkmate because bishop f8. Bishop f8, and it isn't mate. C takes d. Queen d7 attacking the rook. Rook goes back to e1. Queen d5, knight c3 attacking the queen. Queen h5, knight e5, and queen takes d1. Why? Trying to lessen the burden of defense. So there's no queen. Harder to checkmate without a queen. What is the real big problem? Rook takes d1, and it's very hard for knight now to mount an attack against white. Very hard, because with the queen gone, there are fewer tricks, and the missing rook will be felt that much more. Knight takes e5, d takes e5, and bishop c4. So voluntarily, knight is trading a lot of pieces while being down material. That can be very, very dangerous. Bishop f4, just protecting the pawn, being very patient. No need to rush this position. Bishop b7. Rook d7. All of knight's pieces are very nice. What's the only problem? There's not enough of them. Rook c8, rook a1, h6, rook d8 check. Let's just trade off more pieces. Rook takes rook, rook takes rook. That's check, king h7. Now we have two bishops versus a bishop and a knight, and unfortunately a rook. That's very, very hard. Rook d7, bishop b6, rook takes a pawn on f7, bishop c6. Not much else to do really. e6. Is this game going to be over very quickly, because this pawn is just going to become a queen. Bishop c5. Okay, we control the pawn, but rook takes c7, attacking the bishop. And how are we defending that bishop? And if we are moving that bishop, how are we defending that bishop? Bishop takes f2. Okay, that's how. That's check. Luring the king out, but it cost a whole bishop. And bishop a8. And now we have a checkmate in 5. Will Yuan find it? e7. That's the correct move. b4. Making a queen. That's the correct move. Taking the knight doesn't matter. Whoops. Taking the pawn. Now it's not checkmate in the remaining 2 moves, it's checkmate in 4 moves. So Yuan missed the perfect execution of the game. But is there any reason to run any risk when you are winning so much on the board? I don't think so. Bishop f3, queen takes check, blocks, check, and that is checkmate. So that is the game. I love looking at these games. They are so fun and full of entertaining ideas and back and forth battles. So thank you very much to Yuan and Knight for that game. Now let's look at the two tournament leaders with both 2 points, the two players who are both above 2000 in rating, FRBRHS, and below the Frenchman. This game is scary. This game is super accurate. It is really scary. Chess.com has awarded this game. So Black got 1 brilliant move, 2 great moves, 39 best moves, and 22 excellent moves, where White got 3 great moves, 46 best move, and 12 excellent moves. That is one accurate chess game. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, and we have bishop g6. This is called the neo-orthodox variation of the Queen's Gambit declined. If you are inclined to study this at home, this is a very, very accurate game. Then bishop to e7, e3, this is all theory. Castles, knight c3, h6, attacking the bishop, and the bishop goes to h4. c5, and this is the last move of theory, although many Grandmaster games have been played here. Strikes at the center, fighting for space. Capture that pawn. D takes c4, bishop takes c4, queen takes d1, check, just exchanging. Why exchange queens? Rook takes queen. Is it because these two players know that they are by far the highest rated players in the game, in this tournament? So if they lose the game against each other, there goes their biggest chance of winning the tournament. And maybe they are pretty happy to exchange queens, because that will get the game closer to a draw. Is it that kind of professional chess thinking we are seeing? Bishop takes c5, castles, knight bd7, rook d2, g5, and that may be just a small inaccuracy. However, I'm not sure how much of an inaccuracy it really is. Bishop g3, bishop just says, okay, you gain some space, but maybe I can attack you later. a6, nothing lands here, protected. Bishop e2, b5, knight e5, and knight takes e5. Great move. Great move. Bishop takes e5, that's of course forced. Bishop goes back to e7, defending the attacked knight. f4, striking at this slightly exposed structure of pawns. Bishop c5, saying, okay, I will make a counterattack. You can of course capture this knight. You are very welcome to, because I can capture here and I can capture here, because that will be check. So we see of that, we see rook d3 defending that pawn. Now the knight really is attacked, therefore knight d7. That comes, of course, with an attack against the bishop. Bishop moves to d6. Further trades. That's completely fine by both players, apparently. A little bit of a peaceful game amidst all this super accurate play. Bishop takes, best move. Rook takes, forced, of course, and g takes. Voluntarily opening up lines against the king, because black knows those will be hard to exploit with the remaining material on the board. Rook takes f4. It's not going to stop white from trying, though. This rook could be ready to do some damage here. Knight e5, nicely coming back to be able to defend against all of that. Knight e4 and knight g6. That is given a question mark. I'm not sure if that is really correct, that deserves a question mark, because knight f6 check is the best move, is the best way to try to punish it. The king goes to g6 and knight h5 check is the point. And this is supposedly exploiting the mistake, the inaccuracy of going back here with the knight. The king, of course, goes to g8, the best move, and the rook comes to f6. And maybe there was something better here. Maybe there was something, but I have not been able to find it. I agree with FRBR chess here. I agree that this is the most ambitious way. This is the best way I've been able to find to try to press the advantage. Bishop goes to b7. So the Frenchman believes that he has the time. Even though this knight, these rooks are very menacing and the bishop can come here, the Frenchman believes he has the time for this, and if he's right about that, then he should be able to defend. Bishop d3. Apparently a little bit of a mistake. Who can fault that move? Who can call that move a mistake? It goes to d3, it attacks the knight. The knight is hard to protect, it's only protected once. It's attacked twice with the rook as well. How it's looking at h7, it's going for all these aggressive ideas. How can that be a mistake? Curious if you have an idea what white should have played here. I'm very interested. What move is better than this? Knight e5, getting out of the attack and attacking the bishop. Rook d4, saying okay, you can have the bishop. So rook a c8, not saying knight takes bishop, but improving the rook first. h4. Of course we would so like to play this check. That would be checkmate. But the knight is defending. It wouldn't be checkmate immediately, but very soon, because the king can't go here. So rook takes h6 will end in checkmate. Rook check. King goes to h2. A little bit of a cheap great move there maybe, because it's the most intuitive move in the position. However, it is absolutely the best move. It's the only really strong move in the position. Rook d1, bishop e2, rook takes d4, e takes d4. A lot of simplification here. Knight g6. Knight is very happy to go back to g6 now that the bishop is not on d3 and that a pair of rooks have left the board. King g3, the king comes up Is it like Short and Timon here, where the king becomes the vital attacking piece? However, it cannot come here. So how is it actually? Let's see, here, here, here. How is this king coming in? But there has been a game in a position that was locked like this, where the king became an attacking piece and helped out in a checkmate in the middle of the board, in the middle of the game. Knight e7, knight f4, knight f5 check. The knight has been improved. The king goes to f2 because it cannot really go forward. Knight takes pawn, winning a pawn, but bishop d3. Rook d8. Rook takes h8, winning the pawn back. That's the point. Knight c6. Bishop e4. A bit of a mistake, apparently, because of knight e4. Rook h5, attacking the knight, and bishop takes e4. The computer is saying that black should have been more ambitious here, because this allows all this simplification. I don't know what I feel about that. Is there really something? Is there really something that is so much better here? Like, it doesn't look like any of this stuff is working. I'm pretty sure I would play it the same way. Bishop takes bishop, rook takes knight, and bishop to b1, threatening the pawn. So a3, rook d2 check, rook e2 blocking that, great move, rook d4, king f3, b4, g4, bishop takes a4, bishop takes a3 rather, but bishop b takes a3, b takes a3. Sorry, I've been recording for a long time today. I'm a little bit tired. And rook a4 going after the pawn. So this looks very much like a drawn position. Maybe the bishop, like maybe black is a little bit better. The bishop may be a little bit better than the knight. Maybe. Rook e3, king h7, knight h3. Like, these players are just so accurate. Look at that. Wants to come here. So f5, the perfect response. Knight g4 check, knight g5 check rather, king g8, and g takes. F5, and then bishop takes. So it's much better to take with the bishop, even though this is the case. King g3. Not trying any sort of trying to win this pawn right away, because it's dangerous. Bishop check, for instance. So first the king goes out of the way. Check, king goes back, and this pawn is lost, and now we can take here. Takes and takes, and the rest of this game is, there's a lot of moves, but this is a draw, a technical draw. Even though white wins this pawn here, it's perfect, sort of almost machine-like technique for black, playing the perfect defense here. And the game was agreed drawn in this position because there's no way for the king to get out in front of away. It's in the way of this pawn, so the pawn can't queen. If the king tries to go away, the rook will be subject to attack when the pawn is pushed ahead. So the king will have to stay here, and if the king does have to stay here, it will be a draw. There is no way to make progress for either side. So what an unbelievably accurate game. Very, very amazing. So thank you very much to FRBRHS and Bilu for providing us with that, let's say, master lesson in how to play ultra correct chess. That was extremely, extremely impressive. Now we go to the next game between Fargrand and Sam, and this is an English. c4, e5, knight c3, knight c6, e3, knight f6, knight ge2. Nice little idea by Fargrand. d5 though, and b3, allowing d4 for black. Luckily for Fargrand, black misses that and plays bishop c5 instead. g3, it's allowed again, and now d4 is played. So it's very hard to play these English. I know that, for instance, Bilu, the Frenchman, plays the English like this, holding back on d4, playing d4 as the culmination of the opening instead of taking the space early in the game. But you are sometimes allowing black to take too much space when you do this, and now white has to defend a little bit here. Knight d5, knight takes, pawn takes, and queen takes, so that cost a pawn, and maybe it will even cost more than that, because e takes, missing the rook hanging in the corner. Can you see it? Now two rooks are hanging. Bishop takes d4, knight takes, and the rook is still not captured. But bishop c5, now the rook is captured. And even if you didn't play knight c5, if you played something like f3, knight would capture on f3 with check. And if you played rook g1, queen check here, let's say rook g1, queen check here, bishop here, knight check, king moves, we are still winning the rook. So trying for active defense with bishop c4, queen takes, and that only allows one legal move, which is to drop the bishop back. Bishop f1. Bishop develops to f5, d3, rook d8, bishop b2, knight f3, check, protected by the queen. So king e2, very, very hard to defend this as white. Bishop takes d3, that is check, it is defended by the rook. Trying for queen takes, giving up the queen for a rook and a bishop, because we can take with the king here. And if we could get two moves here and check, we can win the queen. Knight takes h2. Bishop takes e5, queen check, bishop blocks, knight f3, king e3, and queen takes d4 check. Allowing king f3, king takes f3, but of course in this position black is up a queen for a bishop. So that is a huge advantage to black. And queen takes a1. So now it's basically over. We can see the rest of the game very, very quickly, just to see the technique made like so. Here it is, made like oh my god, made like that. Yeah, so the last 15 moves of that game was, I didn't do much of commentary on those, because it was just a hunt for the king with no debate of what the result was going to be. So that is a lesson that we are very happy to learn, that when you play the English, watch out for that d4. You can get in a position where you get squashed because they're neglecting to play d4 and allowing black to occupy d4 on your side of the board will make it very, very hard to get the pieces in play and coordinate any sort of strategy. So thank you to Farground and Sam for playing that game and sharing it with us. It was very entertaining. Now, we have fellow YouTuber CJ Rocks, also known as CJSMR, has done videos on chess in ASMR style here. Just search CJSMR on YouTube and you will find them. And playing against the most chill possum in the entire world, Zen Possum with the white pieces, who opened the game d4, e6, c4, b6, e4, bishop b7. This is the queen's pawn opening English defense, something that I have almost never seen, but it can transpose into something very normal very soon. Bishop d3, c5, and d5. So it looks like a queen's Indian, but there's no knight f6, and we have d5 on the board. So this is a new position for me. Bishop e7, knight c3, and d6. Queen g4, bishop f6, and d takes e6, and of course f takes e6. Very aggressive play from Zen here. Maybe being very Zen, but also being very aggressive in this game, because queen takes e6 is check. Queen e7. Okay, let's relax a little bit, says the Zen Possum, and exchanges the queens. Queen takes e7 check. Knight takes e7. Bishop f4. Knight f5. Knight f3. Knight d4. Very strong knight established in the center. But is it stable? No. Knight takes d4, c takes d4, and knight b5. Castles. And bishop takes d6. Rook d8. And just e5. Probably also... No, I don't think you can play c5. Yeah, it's the best. Just play c5 first, so the bishop has to move, and now our bishop is defended. So knight c7, it's actually played right away because it wins not the knight, the exchange. Wins the exchange. Bishop takes g2. What a cunning way to try to muddy the waters. This would actually work if it were not for the fact that these two bishops are now in trouble. Rook takes, excuse me, bishop f3, rook takes the bishop, h6, and the rook goes to g3, and in this position black just resigned. This rook here is going to fall, and I mean, you could probably fight here, but it is objectively winning for white. And if you don't have that much energy, I had a long day at work or whatever, I can absolutely see how you would resign the game from here. So a very, very short game, only 20 moves. Thank you to Zen and CJ for providing that. Now we have Unusual Butter versus Toby, or Blambe versus Bobsky is their screen names. What kind of a game will we have here? e4, g6, the modern defense. d4, bishop g7, knight c3, d6, all theory. f4, one of the aggressive lines. a6, knight f3, b5, bishop d3. This is all theory. This is called the pseudo-Austrian attack of the standard modern defense. these opening names are very long sometimes. Castles, knight d7, e5, breaking in the center, c5, countering a center on the flank. And this is not exactly theory, but it's following the normal principles of this opening, and it's all correct for both sides. Bishop e3, rook c8, queen e1, knight h6. It can feel maybe a little awkward that you have to develop like this, and maybe it feels, and you have to develop like this because you can't go to your normal square, and maybe this phalanx of pawns seems very intimidating, menacing, but it has left a lot of air on the light squares that black can come in and utilize. So the game here is actually almost completely equal. No great advantage in reality for white here. F5, it's not going to stop white from trying to prove a kind of advantage though. G takes, and bishop takes the knight, bishop takes bishop, and bishop takes the pawn on f5. But c takes, and the queen comes in with an attacking idea. Look at this, look at all these pieces. So this looks extremely dangerous for black. Believe it or not, the computer says black is winning this position. Bishop e3 check is the idea. And look at this bishop. And look at this protected bishop. Protected like this, checking the king. So that backfired. But king h1, can white now start to defend this or mount an attack despite these menacing bishops? Let's take a look. D takes c3. So just capturing the knight. But e6 is the point for white. That is what white was banking on. And this is very interesting. Knight e5. Knight takes e5, d takes e5, and e takes with check. So you cannot capture that pawn, is the point. Because then when you move the bishop here, for instance capturing this rook, it will be check. So what can black really do? Surprisingly, black is almost fine when Toby finds this move. King f8. Almost fine here. White does have an advantage, but it's not huge. And that's because this pawn is shielding the king. And white can never capture this pawn. You can't capture your own pieces. Can we get around it though? Queen h6 check. That's not the way. Can you see the problem? Bishops can also move backwards. Statistically, backwards knight moves, in particularly coming to the first rank, and long backwards diagonal moves are the moves that is most often missed at all levels of chess. Bishop takes h6. That is basically the game. Bishop takes c8 though. Queen takes c8. B takes c3. Queen h3. Nicely exploiting the pin so you can't capture the queen. Rook f2 defending. Bishop e3 attacking the rook. Rook a f1 defending the rook. But bishop f4, and how are you stopping that? How are you stopping the queen capturing here? There is a way. Rook takes bishop, but then the rook is no longer defending g2, so queen takes g2 is checkmate. And that is the end of that game. What an explosive game in the modern defense standard pseudo-Austrian attack. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Unusual Butter, for providing that entertaining game for us to enjoy. And thank you to you who I hope have fallen asleep a long time ago listening to this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I will see you in the next video.